Once upon a time, in a world long, long ago, there was a little girl who dreamed about working in the construction industry. And she dreamed about working with murderers, ex-cons, convicts, and drug dealers. Ha ha ha! Bullshit. No, she didn't. Let's get this week's video started. Howdy folks, and welcome back to the channel. So yes, murderers and drug dealers. If you didn't already know, I've worked for 15 years in the construction industry, and today I wanted to make a video that was a little bit different and share how I survived working with murderers and drug dealers. Okay, now before we get into this, I need to put a little disclaimer out there that I'm not a professional on this subject. I can only give you my stories and insight from experiences over the last decade or so. So you might be thinking, Michelle, why are you deciding to talk about this now? Well, we are currently in lockdown, and it's given me a lot of time to think about the past experiences that I've had over the years. And something that I've wanted to do for ages is write a book on my experiences and all the good things and the bad things that have happened to me in construction. And hopefully that will help any others out there. And in the chapter that I'm most recently writing, there was a lot of content on experiences that I've had working with ex-convicts and criminals and drug dealers, and all of it completely true and honest. And so that's why I thought it'd be quite nice to just make a little video and see what you guys think about this. I always talk about the importance of story sharing and storytelling because it can always help other people. And luckily enough, over, like I say, a long period of time of my work, I've always kept kind of journals, these bad boys here, and I've just jotted in them funny things that have happened to me. And when I started to write about the funny things, then the more serious things came to mind. I thought, I'd write those down, and I've had these for so long, and I just thought, you know what, let's put it into a proper formula and start writing the book. So that's what's going on in the background. Shall we get a little bit more intimate? Let's do that. Ooh, story time. Yes. So when you sign up for a job in the construction industry, working with criminals is probably something that you don't expect. It's certainly something I didn't expect starting all those years ago when I was 21. I'd not been exposed to kind of a world outside of my bubble, which didn't have any criminals or convicts in it. This is a good thing. But as soon as I started working, quite quickly, I was exposed to working with men who were ex-criminals. Now, I do believe everyone in life deserves a second chance. Not so sure about murder. Still coming to terms with that one. But yeah, so I've been writing this book chapter recently, and there's a few stories in there that I'd like to share. So first up, we'll go straight in. We'll go dive deep with the murder guy. Yeah, so I've worked with quite a few guys who have done like GBH, which is gross bodily harm, and one particular guy that served time for murder. And I actually met this guy a day after his release from prison, and after a few hours it came out that he had been released from prison for murder or attempted murder. I think it might have been attempted murder because I think the person still lived but was harmed massively by the attack. Anyway, that was quite a shock to me because you don't get any pre-warning that you're going to be working with someone who is an ex-convict, and it's difficult because you can feel like you can be put in some sort of dangerous situation with that person. Like, I don't know if that person has changed over their time in prison, whether they're resentful, whether, there was all those types of questions running through your mind. But this guy had stabbed someone in the neck with a barbecue fork. And at the time I was young, in my early 20s, and my job was to kind of oversee this guy and his workforce. So it was quite difficult. There's a lot of things running in my mind, like, what if you piss off a ex-convict? Like, there's questions. There's questions definitely running through your mind. Now, would I have been better off not knowing what he'd done? Maybe so. But the one thing that I found in construction is over the years, anyone that I've worked with that has done time or has a past, 9 times out of 10, they will tell you. It just naturally comes out in conversation, weirdly. And the murder and like the stabbings and the GBH and the aggressive behaviour is quite hard to deal with. Especially when you've established a working relationship with that person, you kind of trust them. And then all of a sudden they throw this curveball and you think, okay, this is slightly difficult. And also from an employer's perspective, they don't have to tell you that you're working with someone that's done time. 9 times out of 10, some people probably don't even declare it on a CV. So yeah, it can be a really difficult situation. So how did I deal with it? Well, I tried to find humour in it, as I always do, but there's not much humour in someone really hurting someone else. If they tell me the story and I feel like they're not resentful, then I will try and distance myself from that person because, like I said, I have to protect myself at work. I've worked with another guy who also shot his ex-girlfriend, who was his girlfriend's at the time, partner, and he did time, and he was actually doing community service whilst I was working with him. And this guy had a really short temper, and that's when I knew I needed to keep my distance from him at work. Drug dealers, yeah. So there's a lot of them in the construction industry. I feel like this is not at all breaking news. Like I said, I think like everyone needs a second chance, so I try not to judge people straight off the bat. But I've worked with a lot of drug dealers, from someone who deals weed right the way through to someone who deals like hardcore drugs, and probably is still doing that whilst at work, not at work, but whilst they're working with me outside of work. Hope that made sense. And yeah, sometimes it has interfered with the jobs. Construction is supposed to be really hard in terms of nailing down those who are taking drugs or alcohol on site. But as far as I've experienced, the laws on that have been really relaxed. Like I've never seen anyone tested for drugs and alcohol on any of the sites that I've ever been on. Drugs is a really weird one. Like sometimes you can't detect when someone is on drugs, and then other times it's blatantly obvious. But the one thing that I want to share also is that it runs through all different levels. So like guys on the ground that are, shoveling dirt, and labourers, cleaners, right the way up to higher management. Like there seems to be like no distinction here on the drug taking side of things and the drug dealing side of things. Again, a lot of the guys are really open and will share stories. I've learned so much about drugs. Working in construction industry. Like I said, I've never really been exposed to it prior. And it is interesting, but it's also an underworld and a criminal underworld. So it's sometimes hard to believe some of the things that you hear. And some things I will have to save for the book because I don't feel comfortable sharing them on camera, which I know sounds weird. But some thought needs to be put into when describing these situations. But drug dealers, I've worked with some really likeable characters, and that sounds crazy, but one of the things that I always discuss with my brother, who also works in construction, is that we'll be talking and I'll be explaining about a guy that I work with. I'm like, he's really sound, he's really funny, I get on really well with him, but also he's a massive drug dealer. Always done time for dealing drugs. And it's really hard. It's really weird because you're working with humans and you want to create working relationships, but then a lot of them have these deep, dark backgrounds. And the more you find out, the more it can instill quite a bit of fear into you. So anyone out there that's kind of working in this environment and is thinking, how do I deal with working with drug dealers and murderers or ex-convicts? Well, the thing that I'd say is try and protect yourself as much as possible. So actually talking about it helps, because if I find out what they've been done for, it makes me feel a little bit easier. For example, I've never worked with a rapist. I'm not sure that someone would be open about that situation anyway. But like sex offenders or anything like that, I would probably have a hard time dealing with. I'm not saying murder or drug dealing is any better. It is not. But I also have to think about how I protect myself, and a drug dealer is probably not going to be that interested in my world. Having said that, they pretty much were. One time on a job, I got offered to do a drug run, to travel abroad and bring back a parcel. I mean, it was a free holiday. Why didn't I take it? Who knows? Probably because I don't want to spend the rest of my life in prison. So there you go. I know this has been a little bit of a waffle video, but I hope you like those little stories and snippets. There's plenty more if you would like to learn more, and to take a little bit of insight into working in an industry where there seems to be, unfortunately, a bit of a criminal underworld. Thanks for watching, folks. Hope you've enjoyed this slightly different video. Go ahead and hit the subscribe button and click on the notifications. Otherwise, how are you going to know when I'm posting videos, which is quite regularly right now? And I'll be back real soon.